But what you're saying is that the reason it got that reputation of things were like a little Chicago was because it was a
you
dry
better believe
county
it.
at one point?
Yeah, the chief of police came out of his house one morning, and luckily he looked underneath his car, and there was dynamite there.
under his car.
When did Bowling Green vote wet?
58. It went dry in 58. It went back wet again in 62. The whole 4 years I was in dental
Okay.
school. In fact, I had a route from Louisville to Bowling Green calling this. I worked my way through dental school.
This
is gonna be good.
It was dry, it was wet, and then they voted it dry in 1958?
Yes.
And then again voted in 1962 to make it wet again?
Right.
Yeah.
It had to go 4 years.
They re-weighted it.
They re-wetted it?
Re-weighted it.
And what kind of bad blood did that make for the people who lived here?
It stayed wet for a time after it was voted dry, because it was in.
I'd say it never
Well,
really.
look,
It stayed pretty moist, even during that time.
It was
more. It legally stayed dry. It legally stayed wet for about a year and a
The
half.
county was never wet, was it?
Yes, yes, it
Yeah.
was. Yes.
Alverton, Bill Spivey. Stices.
Blockhouse in 31W North.
Get ready and prepare to be a part of history as we welcome 6 former and 1 current mayor of Bowling Green. You know, as the city prepares to usher in a new millennium and we begin to celebrate a second 200 years, we thought it befitting that we would bring together these former and 1 current mayor to talk about how the city has changed and what we can look forward to in the future. And you were just talking, and that's kind of fun to talk about. Bowling Green had that reputation of being a little Chicago. So what were those years? What were we talking about?
From 58 through 62.
When it was dry, when
Yes.
they voted it dry. Oh, you remember?
Those are approximate dates.
And what did you say about a police chief coming outside?
Oh, yes. Better not say too much. He's still living. But he came out of his home, and luckily he looked underneath the hood of his car, and there were 3 or 4 sticks of dynamite there that would have blown up if he had started his car.
Dirty stuff, huh?
Oh, boy.
Dirty stuff. You have a fond memory of, I mean, I know you probably have hundreds and thousands of memories as to when you were, now see, you turn the cameras on and they quit talking. But when you were mayor, I want each of you to share that with us. Do you have a fondest memory, something that comes to mind? And just anybody, and we'll go around. Patsy, you don't have
Well, one of the things that we were talking about before we began the show was that for most of us, our fondest memory was the day that we saw our successor sworn into office. And I guess there's probably some truth in that.
There probably is. And I wonder, you know, you look at what politicians have to go through these days, the scrutiny, the lack of privacy. Why would anybody want to do it? Huh?
That's an excellent question.
Good question.
Love of community.
Yeah.
Community?
Love of the community.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, is that
absolutely.
really why you
That's
did
the
it?
only reason that you would do it, I would think.
Yeah.
Oh, ego.
Okay, ego plays a role.
Be honest about it.
Sure, well, we all got egos.
When ego-
Everybody got
when-
egos.
I think,
don't.
yeah, I think Bernie's made a good point. I don't think anybody who runs for office can honestly say that he or she is lacking in ego. I think that's just a part of it. But I think Johnny's correct too. There's much more to it than that. There are a lot of people that have that ego that don't have the commitment to the community or who are not willing to express their commitment in that way. There are many ways to serve the community. Elective office is only one of them.
I agree with Mayor Sloan. I think the ego portion will go away probably the day after the election, and from then on, I think it's service to community and trying to find ways that you can improve the city in whatever way it is. You know, each mayor probably had a different need, and I think that it might have been expressed through maybe a convention center, which wonderful things have happened throughout our city in so many areas that all the mayors need to be thanked because they made my job a lot easier. I can do some of the soft sides now because so many of the things have been put in place. There is a good economy here, and I can then look to things like neighborhood revitalization and maybe underserved groups like the international people that are coming here. There's a lot of different areas now that I'm looking at that maybe in the past it wasn't even an issue. Things do change, and everyone has something different to to promulgate, I'm sure.
And I want to hear about those, but also, and be honest with me, okay? Aren't there times, like after you were out of office, when you look at your successor and go, oh, why is he doing that? I would have done it this way. Come on, right?
Yes,
You still do it?
yes.
Because you have that sense of ownership of the position? You been there? You done it? Yes?
I think you do. I think you actually say, why did they do it this way, or why did she do it this way? Because I wouldn't have done it that way. But, you know, once you've been there, you've been a part of it, and you feel like you own some of it. You may not get paid for it, but you,
I
feel...
think there's an institutional loyalty there to anybody that has served in that office, and even though you might question the things that somebody does, you know what they're going through, and you know what the pressures are, and even if I disagree with something that Mayor Renault is doing, I know what he has put himself through to get to that point. And can be more understanding, maybe.
You know, someone once said that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and I think by not being on the inside and seeing what goes on, and you know a little bit about it, that can be very dangerous because you start forming opinions without having all the facts in front of you. And as all of us have been involved in decisions that citizens have disagreed with, I don't think it's fair for us to disagree with an administration that follows behind us because maybe we don't have all the facts either in front of us. So I'm certainly never, if I'm going to be critical, it will not be in public. It'll just be, I'll maybe talk to myself or my wife about it, but I would never be guilty of criticizing
There you go.
someone in public.
Well, you remember a time when you, one of the bigger surprises, or when you got into office and you thought, "Ooh, nobody told me about this." One of those? Share one of those with us.
It's much more fun to run and get elected than it is to serve. Once you do all that, you say, my God, now I've got to serve.
Harold, what about you?
Well, you mentioned a minute ago when Eldon mentioned about how good the economy is now. The state's got surplus money. Who ever heard of surplus money in Frankfurt, right? There was a time when Bernie and I was there, and I think Patsy was there in 1979, 80. We had some money problems. The economy, the interest rate was what, 16, 18%?
Got
Y'all
to
remember all that?
21.
21 at one time.
Big percent.
Jobs were hard. Who could start a small business? My partners and I tried to start a small business in that environment, and you can imagine what happened. We pooled all our money, and it lasted about 90 days. So it's pretty tough to borrow money and try to operate in that environment. So those that served during that period of time remember some bad economic times from Bowling Green. Certainly that today is what we're seeing today, the results of new and better jobs, is made Bowling Green better financially and made it better for all of us.
I am a little jealous of those people that had revenue sharing.
Yeah.
I hear people harken back to that all the time.
I
about
can
during
certainly
revenue
speak to
sharing.
that because I became mayor at just about the time that revenue sharing was completely phased out. My
Aren't you
timing
lucky?
was impeccable, yeah. But it was a very tough time, and I know you all can certainly attest to that. But one of the things that Bowling Green had done to ease that, we had spent the vast majority of revenue sharing funds on one-time projects rather than recurring expenses. It was still tight, but it was much worse for communities that had put that revenue sharing money into things like employee salaries and things of that sort. They really felt the crunch. But you bet, Eldon, the revenue sharing days were the good days. I was the city commissioner at that time and then mayor when it was gone away.
Creative financing, is that what had to follow?
Yeah, they were great. Not only that, but we also, I guess when Dr. Kyriakos was mayor, right at the tail end of his term, we also started getting revenue from the state on a gasoline tax.
Gasoline tax, that's
We got, I think there was a 2% increase was added to the gasoline tax, and so the municipalities and the local governments were awarded half of that, 1/2 of a cent for that.
1.5%.
Yeah, that gave us about $500,000–600,000 a year for street improvement and for road improvement and so forth. And that was capital money. We had revenue sharing, which was strictly, as Patsy said, capital improvement. Then we had a lot of block grant money.
Community development,
And
model city.
that was,
Revenue sharing was a great thing, and it brought a lot of money into the city of Bowling Green. but there's a lot of mayors around the country that went to jail because of revenue sharing. And luckily here in Bowling Green, we had some good city managers that took care of the money. We had good planners, good developers, and money was spent in the right direction. And in my 4 years of mayor, I never remember an audit made at the city of Bowling Green on revenue sharing or community development or model city, which were all federal programs. And I knew mayors at the time that were in a world of trouble, went to jail because of it. But you do need good support, even though you have that revenue sharing coming in. It can get you in trouble too, as Patsy says, as salaries and things like that. And luckily we didn't do it back in those days. We put it in one-time projects, as Bernie said.
I've been here now a long time, and I just cannot believe, probably about as long as you've been here, but, which is about, what, 17 years, 18? A long time, since we're only 21. But the changes that I see in the city just, they wow me. Now, I don't have that same sense of ownership, perhaps, that you do. I mean, I love this place, but it's different than having been mayor. When you look around now and you see the city, what comes to your mind? Really? I mean, because it's a wow.
Can we roll the clock back about 30 years?
Do you really, is that how you feel when you?
Well, when you look back 30 years ago, Chester Street did not go all the way through. You couldn't get across town from east side to west side. The only street would flood. That's been taken care of. The operation up downtown operation, the renovation of the entire square area, and that Western Avenue wasn't built at that time. Campbell Lane was not extended all the way through.
Scottsville Road.
Scottsdale Road,
Well,
it's farmland.
We didn't have anything to do with the Scottsville Road. That was a state type thing. I'm thinking about what the city itself had was involved with. The library has been improved, extended, remodeled. We've extended water sewer lines. We just keep going, just keep on. You know, it's just it's unimaginable almost if you hadn't been here. Now, those
You need
people.
to see it actually occur.
Well, the thing I'm talking about right now, 50% of the people voting have no idea what I'm talking about. It's been here ever since they've been here.
What about you, Charlie?
I think that one of the things that we see that the real improvement has been made is when being a native of this community, or Warren County, the professionalism of the government is much, much better today than it was when Spiro was elected mayor. It was a whole different atmosphere, a whole different world when he came along and they had the city manager form of government, put it more on a professional type basis to run it the way that things should be run. And where that they had been a lot of patronage, a lot of non-professionalism.
Product of the times, or what?
Well, I think two big things, as Charlie said, have really helped develop Bowling Green. City manager form of government, to me, was one of the greatest things. And passing twice the occupational tax. When I went into city government, we were bankrupt. We were borrowing money from city banks to make the payroll, believe it or not.
This was 1972?
I went into, right, 72. We had to borrow money, but we got the occupational tax before that, and we started getting money in before that. But right after we got the occupational tax in, we started growing in industry, and the curve on the occupational tax, I don't think is, maybe it's gone down a year or two, but not very much over the last 30 years.
Was there an uproar when that was passed?
Not very much, not very much. We passed a 0.5% to start with, and then about 2 or 3 years later, we passed a 1% on top of that, which has been constant since then, 1.5%.
And I think that's what's really created all of the
Sure.
the boom that we see here in Bowling Green. It's through job creation, and everyone who has a job in the city of Bowling Green pays 1.5% of their salary to the city of Bowling Green, and that really is the fuel that runs city government. It seems to me like y'all might know better than I, but I think about 70-some% of our revenue,
Well, 62.
60-some% of our revenue is based on the occupational tax, and while that's a wonderful thing, it also is very dangerous because we're tied to the economy, and as we all know, the economy goes up and the economy goes down. But the citizens of Bowling Green don't want their services to go up and down.
That's right.
They want them to be very consistent. And I don't know, I think we've all dealt with the fact that maybe some of the revenue needs to come from somewhere else. and not so much emphasis on the occupational tax. Property taxes are lower in Bowling Green than they are in most any other city in the United States. When people move here and they find out what their property tax is, they think there's a mistake.
believe
Yeah, they don't want to tell you because they're afraid they'll go up.
Well, I think our taxes in general, Johnny, are lower. I know they're lower than any other second-class city in the state of Kentucky. That's the occupational combined, occupational property, school tax, and the whole works. Even though we think our taxes are high, we get more for our tax dollars here, I believe, than probably any other second-class city. I know we do in the state of Kentucky, and a lot of third, fourth-class cities.
What about that dirty word in some circles of merging the county and the city government? Will we ever hear the end of that discussion? And I don't care to hear necessarily your personal views on, which way you go. I don't want to get into a debate on that. But just in general, if we look ahead to the future, how that's shaping.
Let me address that because it came up during my administration and at the times I was mayor. And we talked about earlier before we went on the air about the time when the Bowling Green and Warren County was wet and then it was voted dry. And that, so when it voted the next time, the city went back pretty big to go back wet, but the county stayed dry. And I think that on the merging of city-county government, if it were voted only in the city of Bowling Green, it would, have a chance of passing. But as long as it votes the city and the county, I don't think it'll ever happen, not in my lifetime.
No, the Charter Commission was created when Charlie was mayor. and then the-
1984 through 1987? No. When 1984 through, that was your
Yeah,
term?
yeah.
Wow.
When were you mayor, Charlie? You remember?
Long time ago.
Try to remember the good things, try to forget the bad things.
Here, here.
But, the Charter Commission was then, and then the actual vote on merged government came after Charlie had left office and after I was mayor. And there were a lot of those side issues, like the alcohol sales, schools, things like that got involved in it. But there were 3 or 4 other cities that voted on merged government the same day that we did, and it was soundly defeated everywhere, in Owensboro and Frankfort, I believe, and a couple of other
Scott
places.
County.
There's just not,
Georgetown.
Scott County. There's just not the sentiment for it out there that I see. I don't hear
And people are very
talk
passionate about
that.
it too, as far as their beliefs in it.
You've got one big disadvantage here in Warren County. You've got a large county here. This is not a small county. One of the largest counties area-wide in the state of Kentucky, and you got little Bowling Green right in the middle. So when you radiate out, you've got long distances to go from the city of Bowling Green to the end of the county. And I think there was a lot of misinformation given at the time as far as the merger, the metro. But I think it would very much have a very hard time passing here in Warren County because of the size of the
The
county.
nature of it and the
Yes.
size of the county.
But, I don't think that should limit us from doing some things together,
No.
working with the county in areas that we duplicate services, because, one thing that we all have in common, whether you live on State Street or you live at Richardsville, we're all Warren Countyans. And that always kind of was a pet peeve of mine, that some people who did not live in Bowling Green didn't feel like I was as much a Warren Countyan as someone that lived in Alvaton. Well, I am. I pay the same taxes if I live in the middle of Bowling Green as someone that lives outside of Bowling Green, same county taxes. I just pay an additional tax to the city of Bowling Green. So I'm interested in us operating both governments as efficiently as we possibly can. And I think we should look for ways to partner with fiscal court and maybe reduce the cost of some of the services that all of us as Warren Countyans enjoy.
And a lot of that was done during your administration.
Some of that was done,
County
yes,
Judge
right,
Marvin
with
Cannon, yeah.
Judge Griffin. He was amenable to that, and then later on Judge Buchanan was as well.
And we're still in that same path?
Oh, I think you have to continue looking for opportunities to share. I think that one of the reasons that as a I guess a political science student, I'll consider myself a student all my life of political science. I look at the reason that Metro probably wouldn't happen here is just because it's a rural state. It's predominantly a rural state, and people think like rural people think. And I think that there's so many fiefdoms, as Mayor Sloan said, school systems, and there's administration issues, and we have 2 superintendents, and we have 2 of all the different things, and I think people are not interested in giving up those those positions of leadership. I mean, they worked all their life to achieve that level, and it's when there's 2 or 3 positions there, that's a lot better than one. And I think it's difficult for people to look that way. But I agree with Mayor Webb as well, that every chance that you have to partner on something, it's going to reduce the amount of administration that you have, and actually the money will be more wisely spent.
Let's talk issues. So you kind of touched on this, Charlie. You were mentioning when you were in office. I want to know what the issue was. So was Metro government at the tail end? Or?
Not particularly. I think that, as I brought my scrapbook tonight, like,
What was the issue?
you have a tendency to think. I think the first issue that I was struck with, there was quite a bit of controversy at BGMU, and that we'd had an electrical outage, and that was an issue. Then the other issue that's gone away today was the issue of the university and the fraternities and the sororities and all the people on Save Our Old Neighborhood and all those people, they're ready to fight.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
What was the name
And
of that
that issue
organization?
is not an issue now.
They've resolved.
Up around Western,
I
yeah.
hope so, to some degree.
Or it's below the surface where we can't see it.
It's better than it was, it's just not as much a concern now.
There are other issues that have taken precedence.
But when I ran for election, we ran a public opinion poll. And as it said in the Daily News at the time, we've moved into the next century so far as campaigns, and they just got more expensive and more to do. And we did a public opinion poll, and we asked the people out there what they thought and what were the issues. And many of those issues that showed up then are the same issues that Mayor Renault has. The number one issue was streets and roads.
Streets and roads, same?
It's an important issue, yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very much.
It'll always be.
You never get ahead on it.
No, if we ever get ahead, then we're in trouble.
Now, we're talking beyond potholes. We're talking we want greater,
Oh, yeah.
more streets, more highways, more.
No, I'm talking about if we ever get ahead of the street program, we're in trouble. We're ceasing to do anything. We stand still.
Yeah, that's why I always like to think of it in terms of everybody wants to complain about the traffic and how long it takes to get across town. That's true because there's so much activities, there's so much economic activity going on. That's really a good sign, even though it may be temporarily frustrating. And Bernie's right.
right.
If that were not true, we'd be stagnant.
There's a-
Dead in the water.
I think people have asked me, they said, well, how do you feel now being mayor for a while? And I said, well, I'll tell any new mayor the first thing that you should do is make sure that your state representative is Speaker of the House. That's the very
think that
first
would
thing
help.
I would do, because having an opportunity to have the speaker there, I think certainly enhanced our chances of getting $150 million over the next 6 years for road projects.
Certainly.
Others were cut. I remember when the cuts were coming, and I'd hear from different areas, and ours weren't cut, so I feel very fortunate in that area.
Issues. What was the issue when you were there, Johnny?
Well, I remember the very first one. There were a lot of issues, but you always remember the first one,
Yeah, I
probably. The first issue we tackled as a commission was trying to enact a ordinance for seatbelt law in Bowling Green.
Mandatory seat.
Mandatory seatbelt, and that brought them out of the woodwork. And I remember we filled up the chamber there, and people were standing around the walls, and other people were trying to get in and couldn't get in. And I remember this one gentleman, he was always back in the corner, and he kept heckling me. And
So you were heckled on your
I was
first
heckled,
day?
yes I was.
What a way to start.
Very difficult. And so finally, I'd had about all I wanted to, and I said, this gentleman back here, I want you to come up and talk. You seem to have a lot to say. I want you to come to the microphone where everybody can hear you. And so when he got up there, I asked him, his name and where he was from. And come to find out, he's from Richardsville. So it didn't even affect him. Well, it did.
Came to heckle.
Well, yeah, I guess it affected him when he drove through Bowling Green. He had to buckle his seatbelt, but in Richardsville, you don't have to buckle your
Yeah,
seatbelt.
Johnny don't
At
pick
that
on
time.
Richardsville too
Well, I'm not picking on
A lot of
Richardsville.
good people out in Richardsville.
I love people from
All right.
Richardsville.
All right, Richardsville.
Like there's a lot of good people in Alberton.
Harold,
Right.
Harold, what
I
about,
just happen to live on the city limits of Richardsville.
and what about your issue when you were in office?
Well,
What
I
was-
think, as mentioned a while ago, probably the one that caused the most excitement was the BGMU thing when I was there. The fact that I was supposedly appointed myself to the board, and which the Daily News seemed to run time and time again, which is we all know and everybody else knows. The mayor makes the nominations, the commissions appoint. And well, at that time we had some proposed increases in the rates, as I remember, 38% or 40% or something like that. And I was wanting to make sure that before we raised those rates on the citizens of Bowling Green and Warren County to a certain extent through the water districts and so forth, that we had done our best efforts to make sure that everything was running efficiently at the utility. And of course we had a lot of discussions, a lot of time spent on that. But I think all in all, when it's all over, I think the people of Bowling Green, Warren County benefited from it, I think, in the end, because as I saw, and I think as I look back on it, we had a utility which built up a bureaucracy of its own. And sort of like some of these other bureaucracies that build up in Washington and Frankfurt and so forth, it builds up a bureaucracy where it is not answerable to the people.
Takes on a life of its own.
Takes on a
almost.
life of its
Yeah.
own. It begins to lobby, and it begins to become politically active, which is the same right of any citizen, but behind it stands a great budget and a lot of employees and a lot of votes and all this type of thing. So I think when we look back on it, I think the right thing was done. I think ultimately we raised the rates. I don't remember, maybe half of that, didn't we, Bernie? Something like that.
About that.
Something like that. Maybe half of that. Half of that, maybe 18 or 20%, as I remember. But I think in all, it was a good discussion, and I think basically I think we all came out better for it.
The issue. What about you, Bernie? Your issue.
Oh, I guess collective bargaining.
Collective bargaining.
That's a big issue today.
And Bernie,
matter of
what,
fact.
1976
Yeah,
to
see,
79?
The governor. Yeah, well, let's see, 70,
No, it would have been.
76 through 79, yeah, 4 years.
That's right. Okay.
Collective bargaining was one of the big issues, and I guess one of the things that happened, whether I was either when I was mayor or before mayor, was the sanitation. That was
You privatized it.
yeah, when it's private. And another one was the consolidation of electric plant board and
Water district.
the water department.
Water department.
Those were
And they're big issues, yeah?
Yeah, oh yes.
Well, I was mayor when we combined the water, sewer, and the electric plant board into the BGMU. We had a water, sewer, and sanitation that was completely bankrupt. And because they were under the influence of city government, the only way they could get an increase is to bring it to city government. And of course, back in those days, you just didn't raise any rates or anything like that. And we had electric division that was controlled by TVA. TVA, even to this date, sends down the increases that the BGMU can raise on their electric. So we combined those two departments and put sanitation out for a private bid. And of course, I thought that was a good move. But my big issue, of course, first of all, was trying to keep city manager form of government going, because when we went in as city manager, we had a big, strong group of politicians here in Bowling Green that did not want city manager form of government because it took the hands out of the mayor and the commissioners.
Took away that power.
Took away their power. And city government was run right up in here. It was run in the shirt pocket of the mayor, and he could operate it any way he wanted to. But with the city manager, it stopped. And so I fought the issue of city manager form of government, and it won out. It won big and strong, and I think the city of Bowling Green is a strong city manager. But the biggest issue I had,
And he's grinning. He's grinning. Can't wait to hear
the biggest issue was a dog leash law.
Oh, the infamous leash law.
The week before, we passed a $17 million budget, and not a soul was at City Hall. And the next week, Dr. Glenn Lang brought up the dog leash law, and the place was packed. One fellow had a dog there, his neck broken like this, you know. And I said, Lord, I told Dr. Lang, I said, don't ever bring up an issue like this again.
Well, that resurfaced again, though, didn't it? The leash law?
Yeah, several times, several times.
Back my
was
day.
back.
Yeah.
Charlie's in better
I
shape.
think that's one thing that all of us would probably comment on that Spiro has said, that those evenings when you vote on the really important issue, how you're going to spend the taxpayers' money for the next year, the place will be almost empty. But you bring up an emotional issue like dogs,
Zone change.
Or zone changes, or, of course, that's very important to the people who live in those areas. Or remember when there was even the faintest mention of having curbside garbage pickup? You know, things like that will bring people out by the hundreds to City Hall. But you vote on that multi-million-dollar budget and nobody's
nobody
going to be
cares.
there.
That's right.
What was your issue?
Oh, well, mine would have to be the golf course convention center hotel project. I don't guess I could ever look back on my term as mayor without focusing on that. And it was very difficult and it was very complicated, as you know, and in retrospect, I would certainly have done some things differently. But we stuck with it. You know, there was a group of us that made that commitment. Bernie was one of them. And we stuck together, even though it became very difficult at times, and followed the project through. Of course, it wasn't, you know, Convention Center Hotel did not come to fruition until Mayor Webb was in office. But I have been to that convention center many times since then, and I always get that feeling of pride when I walk in the doors there. And I don't guess I will ever get over that, no matter how old I get or how many times I go there. And one of the things that's really been gratifying to me is the number of people who opposed the project at the time who will take the opportunity to say to me now, you know, maybe you weren't so dumb after all, or something like that, you know. And some have really been very kind in expressing those feelings and saying, you know, that really was one of the best things that's happened to Bowling Green in recent years. And I drive by it almost every day on my way to work, and I still feel good
Kind
about
of
it.
have a little grin as
Yeah.
you go by.
Yeah.
Is your issue how you will be remembered? When people, you know, when they look back for posterity's sake, for history, is it going to be that issue? No?
I don't know.
Okay, you get to look in your little crystal ball ahead, and they're going to look back, and how do you want them to remember you? Each one, you get a chance, you get a shot at this. When they look back, well, you have a park named after you. Aren't you a lucky man? Yeah. So, I mean, that's certainly one
They had
way.
the 75 cents to get your
A little bit of pride.
Don't
No,
just
how do you truly, how would you like to be remembered?
Well, I think the way it really is and how I'd like it is, yeah, I know you were good to me at one time, but what have you done for me lately, you know, and that attitude. But no, it's a sense of pride, and you know, I wouldn't take anything for what I did and what we accomplished back in those days. But, you know, I just want people to think that I was basically worked hard and was honest about it.
Bernie?
I guess I would like to be remembered as an honest and caring mayor.
It works.
Yeah, I think so. I think what Bernie said, and I think what all of us have tried to do is be representative of the people and do what they want. To try to look forward to the projects that we need. Roads has been mentioned is very important to the community. And the future of Bowling Green, not only here, you know, as they say in politics, Charlie, a road promised is worth a whole lot more votes than a road built. But we have seen with our work and the help of our people in Washington and Frankfurt, a lot of things.
And you really
that,
have to have that support. at the
Right,
state
and that
national
support
level.
continues from one administration to another, and that's what's so important. Basically, we all want to help the community, as this has been said earlier. You do it for that reason alone, because you certainly don't do it for the money, not for the time and that type thing. I said one time, they gave me a grade card on my performance, and I said, well, I guess I scored 3 Fs. I lost my friends, I lost my finances, and I lost my family. So I said I got 3 Fs, but I said otherwise I feel like I did a good job. Yeah.
Other than that, you was okay.
All done for the city and the people of Bowling Green.
Right,
So
that's
there. Eldon, you've got till the year 2000, but
Yes.
go ahead, reflect with us. How would you like to be remembered?
Well, I would hope that maybe I would be able to help people that have been underserved, looking at all areas, try to revitalize neighborhoods, maybe where there hasn't been any influx of money, try to improve things for some of the least among us. Perhaps, hopefully I can get this international office going and help English as a second language. I met today with Western to try and build a partnership with them, and Western really needs to focus on that, like a lot of major institutions have already done in large cities. And we'll see about trying to make sure that we we bring about some change and help people that are coming to our community. We can't determine, we have nothing to do with determining who comes to our community, but I think that we have to look at meeting those needs, and so everything we can do, we have to try to provide jobs and all the necessities to make sure that they do become productive citizens. I would hope that I would do that, and I would hope that I can offer some vision so that we can maybe make a city that is more accessible to people. We just installed phone mail, which I think's been needed for years, and we're putting the city on the internet within the next week or two. And I want to see services where people can, from their homes, they can interact with government and actually use their computer to provide services for themselves. And whether it's getting, maybe they're getting building plans or something, I would like them to be able to get GIS information for planning and zoning information. There's so much that I think we can start sharing with people
Get
with
them
some of
more
the new
involved,
technology
maybe?
that we have. That's right. I think we owe it to the people, and those new technologies are just coming on board, and I would rather have a positive part to play in bringing those than getting behind.
Yeah, because it changes so quickly.
That's right.
For sure. Johnny, how would you like to be remembered?
Well, obviously, we don't have much control over how people are going to remember us, I don't think, but
No.
I guess if I could choose what I would want the citizens of Bowling Green to say about me, it would be something like, I may not have always agreed with him, but I think he always did what he thought was right.
That's
I,
fair.
I always tried to, be guided by my conscience and just do the right thing and not worry about how it might work out politically. I don't know about the rest of them sitting here, but I know I made the commitment to the citizens of Bowling Green when I was a candidate that I was never going to run for office again. This would be a one-time thing. So I will not make a decision based on trying to win someone's vote
For re-election.
for re-election. The decisions will be based on what I think is best for the community, which does not mean people are going to think it's great every time, but hopefully they will think that you've got some character and integrity and you did what you thought was right.
That's good. Charlie?
If I may philosophize just a little bit.
Charlie
before I answer.
Hardcastle, philosopher?
There we
Just a little bit. Two things. On the roads, when Harold was mayor, while they came along, was going to build Victoria Boulevard. And all time during his administration, they talked about building things. I met with the state people within a week after I took office. And they promised me they're going to start within 3 months on building it. But I don't know what it was. Mrs. Sloan was mayor when it was built.
Promises.
And so the things that you do is not necessarily the things that you'll be remembered by, because those things are maybe 3,
Gotcha.
4, 5, 10 years from now.
You set the ball in motion,
Right.
but it doesn't.
If you do work on industrial development, or you do things of that sort, or you start a planning for a program or whatever it is, it probably will not be associated with you while you're in office. And so therefore it's hard to say on that, because you can say you'd like people to remember you as being honest and having integrity and all of those things. As it said in the editorial when they left office, said, come back and ask me 20 years from now whether you were a good mayor or a bad mayor, and history will probably determine that. But the majority of the people, and that's a strong statement, are really emotional about things, and what is not necessarily popular, as with Mrs. Sloan at the beginning of her administration, was certainly not popular, but was the proper thing for the citizens of the community. So you have to look at that to say, hey, was it popular or was it not popular?
Or was it the best thing?
Right,
for
it
the
was
city?
the best thing, and you have to be reasonably strong and do that. We came along and it had been very controversial about restoring City Hall, whether you should build a new one or not one, and the commissioners were all frightened to death of the people. And I said, hey, let's do it. Let's do it.
You said, I'm not running for re-election.
I'm not
Let's do
running
it."
for election because it needed to be done so that it would be typical of a progressive city like Bowling Green was.
Isn't that kind of what leadership's all about, though? Doing what needs to be done, not what is popular at the time?
Yeah.
How are they going to, obviously,
Right,
the first female mayor.
Yeah,
that you-
the last one to speak, I've been, everybody has said something here that I could certainly concur with, and when you first asked the question, I was thinking in my mind essentially what Johnny said, that, you know, whether people disagree with you or not, or throw brickbats at you or not, and I certainly experienced a good bit of that, it would really disturb me if I thought that people believed I was in any way self-serving in any of the decisions that I made. And they can go ahead and rip me up as much as they want to, as long as I felt comfortable that I felt I was doing the right thing for the community, and that I thought that deep down most people probably realized that they disagreed with me, but that they didn't, you know, I never took those things personally. I
Right.
guess that's what I'm
It wasn't
trying to
personal.
say. You really have to be thick-skinned, and maybe that's a little more difficult for a woman than it is for a man because of the traditional ways that we have been raised. But I never took those kinds of criticisms personally. I never thought they were criticizing Patsy Sloan as an individual. They were critical and skeptical of some of the things that I was trying to do. And I think that's how you get through these things. If you take it personally, it could really get to you.
It changed you all, yes? Not only do you have that ownership, but you're all different people than you were when you started out, yes? Better people?
Older.
Thank goodness.
But better, yes? Richer for the experience, for having served?
Richer for
Oh, I
the
think so.
experience.
Not
absolutely.
monetarily richer,
No.
richer inside.
I wouldn't give anything for my time that I was mayor. It was a wonderful experience. I would recommend it to anybody, but I wouldn't want to do it as a livelihood. But I don't think, maybe y'all will tell me, I may be a little bit more outspoken, but I don't think that I'm any different today than I was when I went as mayor. I still don't believe my press releases. And I don't get, and I try to, and it's hard to do sometimes, as you, all of you all will know, that when you're in office and everybody's saying you're the most wonderful person that's ever been and you're just great, you know that that's probably not so. You got the same blemishes then after you were elected as you had beforehand.
Yeah.
But you're thicker skinned. So there. We're out of
Everybody
time.
wants to be loved.
We're out of time. Everybody wants to be loved, and I loved having you all here. Thank you so much. This truly has been a delight. 7 mayors, 7 former mayors of Bowling Green. We have been joined by Spiro Kyriakis, Bernie Miller, Harold Miller. Bernie Miller, I just
Bernie
mentioned
Mayor,
you.
boy, way to go. Way to go. Get off that.
Harold Miller, Charles Hardcastle, Patsy Sloan, Johnny Webb, and Alvin Renault. I'm Barbara Deeb. Thanks to all of you for being here. What about campaigns? Changed, different? I mean, could you run the same campaign that
Campaigns have changed big time, yeah.
Hey, let
The
me tell
media
you,
campaign.
We feel very lucky we ran
it was easy to run.
easy.
It was easy to
Didn't have to
run.
raise a dime.
I don't think, Patsy, did that ever happen to us? I think I probably got the most experience in running campaigns, having run for county judge about 3 times.
Bob, there was something I wanted to say, and I didn't get it in, but we all have something in common other than being former mayors and current mayor. I think everybody in here is a Republican, which is kind of unusual to have.